There are some advantages to living on the second floor of an apartment complex, especially when your next door neighbor is also a sexy young thing by the name of Christine Fowler. I've admired her from afar ever since she moved in, and even got her to do a little light housekeeping for me. But nothing is better than going to my window at night and sneaking a peek. There was one night, though, that I was standing on my second floor balcony smoking and whacking when I noticed, to my surprise, something was blocking my view of Christine's room. I zipped up my pants and leaned over the balcony to get a better look. It was some kind of mannequin, like the kind you might see in a storefront window for a dress store, except really, really old. I could tell it was made of solid dark wood and had the frame of a male model. For a second, I had actually thought it was a guy in Christine's room, but she never had men over. The mannequin had splotches of paint that was peeling in different areas on its arms and face, almost like it was covered by some sort of leprosy. It was wearing a thin, long-tailed dark coat and a buttoned-up white shirt and a red bow tie. I wished I could get a better look, but Christine came back toward the model and started measuring it again. When had she taken up sewing classes? I saw she had set up a box of thread and fabric near her bed and even had an old sewing machine at the right window. When did she have the time to get all this? I don't want to say that I watch her room on a regular basis, but it's not like I have anywhere else to go. I kept watching and admiring her work, realizing how much care she was putting into the thing. She smiled in a way that she never did toward me. I saw her bring in a box with a few different wigs and try them on her model that next night. She stroked the dark hair affectionately and sung a soft lullaby as she tailored another outfit for it. I realized she had to love this thing, as odd as that sounds. The way she was so gentle with it, and making sure every single outfit was a perfect fit. I decided that I would ask Jeremy to order me some of the same style clothes off the internet, and started dressing like the mannequin did as well. It felt good to get clean clothes, and when Christine touched the cheek of her model, it was like she was right there touching my own skin. I studied the mannequin, envying the attention it was getting, wishing I could somehow turn her attention toward me. It bothered me to no end. I could see the sparkle in her eyes as she would trim its hair or touch its chest. She loved that thing, as though it were real. Then she spotted me. One night I was out smoking on the balcony and I noticed the mannequin was gone. Curious, I leaned over the railing to see if maybe she moved it and then saw her beautiful blue eyes staring straight up at me. In a panic, because my trousers were halfway down, I made my way back inside and closed the patio sliding glass. A few minutes later, my phone was ringing. It was Christine. "Hey, Mr. Simpson?" she said in the sweetest voice. I loved when she addressed me like that. "Good evening, Christy. How are you?" I answered. I didn't want her to know I was nervous. "Would it be all right if I brought something over to your place tomorrow?" she asked. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what else to do but to say yes. I wanted things to be perfect for Christine, so I made Jeremy leave to go do a few errands. Christy has a key too because she comes over to do our housekeeping. I managed to get on the nicest suit that matched the mannequin and then waited for her to step inside my room. When she did, she was bringing a small wooden box in with her, and I smiled in delight. It had to be the gift she said she wanted to give me. "You look perfect, Mr. Simpson. I guess you really have been paying attention to my work," she said. "How could I not? You've been on display for the whole world to see," I told her. "No, just you," she said. Her red lips puckered out when she said it. Then she passed me the box. "I want to see what you think of the finished product," Christine said. I eagerly opened up the lock and reached inside to see what it was. A few seconds later, I was dropping the box in shock as the hollow wooden head of the mannequin rolled onto the floor. It stopped right at the edge of my foot, and I looked down at its grisly visage. the wrinkled lips and the pale-looking skin that covered its frame. It looked exactly like me in every way. I don't understand, I admitted. Are you sure? Christy asked as she picked up the mannequin's head. I wanted to get every detail right, Mr. Simpson, and that's why it's taken so long to get done. The hair was the hardest part, because Jeremy wouldn't show me any pictures of you when you still had some of your own, she explained. Why are you giving me this? I asked nervously. It felt weird staring at it. The only thing missing were its eyes. Instead, she had cut open 2 empty holes. No, silly. I wanted to make sure I got the details right before I put on the finishing touches, she said cheerfully. I was about to ask what she meant when she placed the mannequin down on my lap and straddled my lap. I was sweating like a hot pig as she touched my face, but it wasn't like I had dreamt it would be. This time, I was scared. She reached into her pocket and took out the same long needle she had used 1,000 times to finish the garments for the mannequin. Then she held me down and jabbed the needle straight under my eye. I screamed louder than I have ever screamed in my entire life as she kept her legs tight around my waist. I tried to push her off, but at my age, I was no match for her strength. I could only sob pitifully. Stop! Please, for the love of God! I screamed out desperately. Christine didn't, though. She took her other hand and covered my mouth. I could barely keep myself conscious as she held it up like a trophy. Then, she placed it right in the empty socket for her mannequin. I kept sobbing bitterly, praying to God that she would stop. After another half hour of digging, she had taken my right eye as well. When she was done, she let go of my frail body and leaned over to kiss me affectionately on the cheek. Then, I heard her leave the room, her heels clacking like hooves as she went down the stairs. Jeremy found me a few hours later on the floor, blood and a little bit of urine covering my body. I had been trying to get back into my wheelchair for almost an hour before that, using my cane to bang against the metal pipe and hope someone would hear. The next 8 hours were a blur. I was rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery and in and out of consciousness more times than I could count. We pressed charges on Christine, but by the time we had made it back to the apartment, she was long gone. Adjusting to being blind has taken some getting used to, but I think I finally have gotten the hang of using voice to text. Something has been bothering me a lot recently about the whole thing. I asked Jeremy recently if anyone had moved to Christine's old apartment. Grandpa, he said. Nobody is going to move into that spooky place. Why not? The police didn't ever file a public report, I said, but he didn't tell me the answer. But I think I know. I know every time I go out and smoke on the balcony, I think the mannequin she made is still there. This quarantine made me question a lot of life decisions I made. Back in February, when this all started, I was working 2 jobs, living with my best friend Lexi, and enjoying the high life. Then we got thrown into lockdown, and I swear, Lexi changed immediately. She was so serious about all of the virus restrictions that even when I was in the house, I had to wear a mask. Anyway, after one particular argument about washing my clothes 3 times, once for normal wash, once on heavy, and once a 3rd time just to be safe, I had enough and told her I was going to move out. That was dumb move number 1. I was already out of work, waiting, and hoping for unemployment and really didn't have a place to go. My parents are elderly and live 2 states away, so I wasn't going to risk that. Then I got the brilliant idea to post an ad that I needed a room to rent on Craigslist. Yeah, that still exists, and it's still just as sleazy. Lexi forced me to move out that same day, though, calling me all sorts of bad names as she tossed my stuff on her front lawn. I didn't even get a chance to argue. So, yeah, desperate times called for desperate measures, and I put an ad out on Facebook, too, with a revealing picture of myself. Call me what you will, but it worked. This older gentleman responded to the ad and contacted me via email. The short message provided me with a small allowance for my gas and instructions on how to get into his apartment when I got there. I didn't ask any questions, although looking back on it, I really should have. You know that saying about too good to be true? Anyway, I grabbed a bite to eat and made it there right around 5:30 on foot to save a taxi fee. Place looked nice enough, and I followed his instructions to get buzzed in. He lived on the 6th floor and explained that because of some medical condition he couldn't meet me in the lobby. Again, stupid me, I didn't ask questions. As he had told me in the email, there was a key waiting for me under his doormat. Inside, the place looked nice, well put together. Nothing that made me paranoid or feel the need to run. Then, I saw this guy standing in the kitchen wearing, I kid you not, a kabuki mask. At first, I laughed because of how bizarre it was. He said his name was Hano, and he wanted to keep the mask on because of the quarantine and provided me with one. Next few minutes were him rambling about the different things in the apartment, and he showed me to the room. This is where things got a little creepy. I saw that he had some mannequins on display that were wearing traditional Japanese kimono dresses with other kabuki, and they were all lined perfectly on the side of the bed. He insisted I pick one out and get changed. Again, his reasoning was my clothing had the virus on it. Once he excused himself, I sat down on the bed and tried to convince myself this was normal. So he was a little eccentric. It's not like he was trying to do something worse than that, right? I went over to one of the mannequins. I think it was wearing a scarlet kimono, and took off the clothing, figuring that I needed to suck it up and appreciate the kindness of strangers. Then the mask it was wearing accidentally fell off, and I noticed that there was a hand-painted face on the other side. It looked very realistic. Once I got finished changing, I went back to the main room where he was now cooking us a fresh meal, and he complimented me on how well the dress fit. I thanked him and casually mentioned the hand painting. "Would you like me to do one of you?" he asked. "But you only saw me when I first came in," I pointed out, gesturing to the mask I was wearing. "It's all right. I've already memorized you," he said. I told him no, and we ate in awkward silence as my eyes glanced around the room. I think the first thing that really made me concerned was when I realized I didn't see an open window in the place, and that the door had a deadbolt on it. "Do you get a lot of break-ins?" I asked him. And again, in a deadpan voice, he said, "More often than not, it's the other way around." Then a few seconds later, he laughed, and I laughed back nervously. He told me that he was going to bed and thanked me again for staying with him, but I really didn't feel like I wanted to now. "Hey, I forgot to go grab my phone charger out in the car. Where is the spare key?" I remember asking. I was just looking for an excuse to get out of there, honestly. This dude had an answer for everything, and this time used my own words against me. "Crime is bad and it's getting late. You can borrow one of mine and go in the morning." Now, I may not be smart, but I knew that staying probably would mean something bad. I got a sixth sense about it, you know? "I have an iPhone. I think you've got Samsung," I said, hoping that my feeling was wrong and that he wasn't being overly creepy. Again, a dead stare and serious voice. "You're not leaving." He said something in Japanese a second after that and clapped his hands. I don't know why I never noticed he had some of those sensor lights, and it got dark in the room a second later. My instinct was to scream, but he placed something over my mouth and I felt immediately faint. But somehow I managed to not black out, and I elbowed him right in the gut. Everything happened so fast after that. I turned around and grabbed what I think was his head and demanded that he tell me where the key was. I felt something smash against my side. I think I kicked him and managed to hit the wall where the light switch was. I flipped it back on and saw he had fallen over the couch and one of his ornate antiques had smashed. To my thanks, it was also where the spare key was hiding. I grabbed it up and ran to the door as I heard him cuss something in his native tongue again, but I never looked back. When I got downstairs, I told the lobby I needed an Uber. I didn't care about money. I just wanted to leave. I saw the elevator moving downward as I raced out the door, and maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I heard Hano asking the receptionist where I went. When I got far enough away from his apartment, I texted Lexi and begged her to let me back with her. I promised I would never complain about all her quarantine rules even. I told Lexi the whole thing, and she did a little digging, and the icing on top of this creepy cake is that the guy apparently has been doing this for some time. Apparently, he would target young women that were either trying to get out of a bad relationship or family situation and promise free rent, but then turn out to be a total creep, watching them night and day when they stayed with him. 2 of the women Lexi said had gone completely missing. It made me think of those weird mannequins, and I wondered if maybe the paintings he did were tributes to victims of his sick mind. I didn't want to think about how he had likely researched about me in the same way, and how easily I could have wound up on that missing persons list.